Awaken your shadow. The truth sets some people free. It offends everyone else. By Seth, the Red Neo, Cherupak.
Chapter 9, Part 3. Awakening Your Divine Messenger.
Your divine messenger is the purest expression of your charismatic self. It is the part of you that converts truth into language and influence, not by being louder or more persuasive, but by clarity, empathy, and presence. It is not charm, it is congruence. It is the natural outcome of language honoring its covenant with truth. It is charisma stripped of performance and the living resonance of the divine word becoming flesh. Influence is your divine right, not a license to dominate others. Your divine messenger does not perform for applause or approval. It speaks only when silent reflection has ripened into necessity. Every sentence carries weight, and this weight is felt as a presence that transcends language. When you speak from hunger for validation, even a divinely inspired sermon collapses under its own excess. When you speak from presence, even a whisper rearranges things. This is the sacred difference between voice and volume. Voice embodies polarity, the marriage of intentional listening and informed declaration. Volume is its counterfeit, a one-sided thrust that speaks up only in hopes of receiving. It is a distortion and misdirection of our natural need for validation. Your divine messenger is the master chef and nutritionist in an age where gluttony has changed its menu. Where Beelzebub rules through algorithms, your divine messenger influences through connection. When Beelzebub treats the refresh button as his dinner bell and instant notifications as his belly-swelling hors d'oeuvres, your divine messenger nourishes itself in the spaces between words and conversations, the pregnant silence where humble listening turns information into knowledge, knowledge into wisdom, and wisdom into words that pierce hearts and recalibrate minds. It is spiritual gluttony recoded for the age of information. The American poet and prophet T.S. Eliot forecasted this in his poem, The Rock, writing, "Where is the life we have lost in living? Where is the wisdom we have lost in knowledge? Where is the knowledge we have lost in information?" When your divine messenger speaks, the air itself seems to respond. The field between people, the third entity, settles too. Not because your words are perfect, but because the energy behind your speech is authentic. Your divine messenger doesn't confuse flattery with feedback. It is not moved by likes, metrics, and affirmation loops that mistake echo for evidence. It has no appetite for the endless scrolling of social media or the outraged consumption of mainstream politics. It does not confuse boardroom applause with the tangible outcomes of winning customers and delivering value. Your divine messenger is the slow and steady hand of a master archer who aims with care at the icy heart of Beelzebub and sets it ablaze with the flaming arrow of truth. His quiver is loaded with arrows carefully crafted by the sacred tools of empathic listening, curious inquisition, and the depth of understanding that can only come from time spent in patient and honest reflection. Beelzebub is the despotic puppet master whose crooked hands slip into the empty vacuum of our confessions withheld. He fondles our heartstrings as we check our phones between every paragraph, as we post wisdom quotes we haven't yet lived. He toggles our tongues to speak what sounds true without the willingness to become it or even test it. He is the author of hypocrisy, scribbling the script of our performances in a ghastly language that speaks in sentences severed from source. In the original Greek, hypocrites means stage actor, a mask in place of a person. In shadow, this can look like appeasing performance or controlling performance. Your nervous system feels this contrast between presence and performance, as can others. Even those who are asleep can feel it. Whether they are aware or not is another matter, which we'll unpack in Chapter 10. This ought to compel you to give your charismatic self and its shadow careful attention. The sin of gluttony has a measurable biological footprint within us and in those who hear us speak or read what we have written. No amount of training in the verbal arts, body language, or voice inflection techniques can mask this. It is an energy that leaks out in all your communication, even online. This is why people who start businesses tend to attract only certain types of clients or customers. I have seen the stunning evidence of this in my work as a marketing and business consultant. Entrepreneurs who grow up immersed in environments riddled with poverty, competitiveness, or verbal abuse attract price-conscious and high-drama clients and customers. Likewise, people who grow up in households where there is respect, trust, loyalty, and love tend to attract an entirely different quality of clientele. Even more stunning is the fact that when an entrepreneur who has grown up in toxic or scarcity-driven environments suddenly awakens and activates their divine messenger, they change the types of clients they attract. This is the single most distinct difference between my clients who struggle financially and those who break the generational curse of poverty and see their income and lifestyle soar to multiples of what their parents and grandparents ever earned. This is not a coincidence, nor is it up to fate. I have written dozens of business books on how to achieve this simply by changing the way that you show up and communicate in the marketplace. You'll find my primary book on this topic, The Anti-Fragile Sales System, on Amazon. My other books on persuasive communication and writing are available only to my business coaching clients. But as I warn even my most committed students, this energy of authentic influence cannot be faked or modeled as taught by rubber chicken motivational gurus like Anthony Robbins. At best, imitation is a recipe for mediocrity. At its worst, it is the costume of the hypocritical self. You cannot imitate it with AI, or strangely enough, even by hiring a writer whose divine messenger is activated. Whether by light or shadow, your charismatic self always shows up in your communication just as it is. The nervous system of every conscious being feels this difference and responds or rejects accordingly. Dopamine studies by Volkov et al., 2011, at the National Institute on Drug Abuse show that overstimulation, whether from sugar, sex, or screen exposure, creates tolerance loops identical to narcotic addiction. Each hit of novelty requires a higher dose of engagement to feel alive. The same neural pathway that once responded to discovery now responds to validation. When you post, refresh, or over-explain, you are feeding Beelzebub's altar. You are teaching your brain that attention equals existence. And in that trance, you forget that the point of voice is not to be heard. It is to transmit coherence. Every time you say something uninhabited, something you haven't integrated, your body knows. Your chest tightens. Your breath goes shallow. The face strains to maintain the signal while the core retreats. This is the subtle burn of hypocrisy. It is not moral failure. It is bioenergetic dissonance. Functional MRI studies from the University of Zurich, Baumgartner et al. Weimar, 2009, show that when people lie, even small social lies, their anterior cingulate cortex activates, signaling internal conflict. The body feels falseness faster than the mind can rationalize it. The divine messenger feels this too. It can't fake resonance. When the truth is spoken, the body relaxes. When performance takes over, something constricts. When your words are inhabited, when what you say is congruent with what you believe and are willing to live, your biology tells on you in the opposite direction. Breath drops lower, the jaw softens. The eyes stop scanning and start settling. Vagal tone rises and the body shifts into that easy social stillness Stephen Porges describes. Communication flowing from safety rather than survival, Porges, 2011. These studies prove that the energetic difference between your hypocritical self and your divine messenger is not a mystical theory. It's measurable. In longitudinal work, Barbara Fredrickson and Bethany Koch found that daily experiences of sincere, other-regarding emotion increased resting vagal tone, and higher vagal tone in turn predicted more of those pro-social emotions, a literal upward spiral between authenticity in feeling and autonomic regulation. Koch and Fredrickson, 2010. You can see the social signature of this coherence in a room. When a speaker is aligned, listeners don't just like them, they couple with them. Uri Hassan's lab showed that during genuine understanding, a listener's brain activity temporally aligns with the speaker's, neural coupling that predicts comprehension and shared meaning. Stevens, Silbert, and Hassan, 2010. Out in the wild, physiology syncs too. During a Spanish firewalking rite, spectators' heart rates synchronized with the walkers they were bonded to, a kind of collective entrainment that tracked relational closeness. Konvalinka et al., 2011. Choir research shows that when people sing together with steady breath and shared intention, their heart rhythms fall into coordinated variability, a cardiophysiological harmony that follows the music's phrasing. Vikhoff et al., 2013. The authentic presence of your divine messenger organizes bodies, not just opinions. Inside the individual, truth-telling eases the very circuits that hypocrisy aggravates. Matthew Lieberman's work on affect labeling, putting felt truth into precise words, shows reduced amygdala activation and increased right ventrolateral prefrontal engagement. This tells us that when we use language to name what is real, we calm threat and recruit regulation. Lieberman et al., 2007. James Pennebaker's decades of expressive writing research add the immune angle. People who translate significant experiences into honest language show improvements in health markers and fewer doctor visits. Language converted back into integrity in the bloodstream. For example, Pennebaker and Chung, 2007. In other words, when the tongue keeps its covenant, the body stands down. You can feel this difference in small scenes. A manager who admits, "I overpromised, here's what I can actually deliver by Friday," often slows the room's pulse. Shoulders drop. Decisions get clearer. A parent who switches from image management to precise apology. "I snapped because I was anxious, not because you were wrong." The parent who makes this confession will watch their teenager's jaw unclench. A founder who stops selling and starts telling the truth by saying, "We missed and here's the plan to repair." The leader who makes this humble admission will find that investor questions get shorter, not sharper. The coherence within the speaker travels into the heart and mind of the listener, and magic happens. Scientific research confirms this energetic exchange. Experiments on interpersonal trust show that authentic pro-social exchanges increase oxytocin, which in turn promotes generosity and cooperation. Kosfeld et al., 2005. That doesn't mean perform sincerity to squeeze hormones out of people. It means the body is built to reward the real. Even sound carries this blueprint. Steady, resonant phonation, supported breath, relaxed throat, reduces vocal strain, Teitze 2008, and tends to pull listeners' respiration into quieter patterns. Humming and gentle toning practices long used to clean the channel, measurably elevate nasal nitric oxide, improving airflow and signaling parasympathetic ease. Lundberg and Weitzberg, 2003. The physics of a calm voice are the physiology of a calm nervous system. This is why we feel the rare and magnetic pull of someone who has activated their divine messenger. Your divine messenger isn't louder or more articulate. It's cleaner. It listens long enough for control to soften into acceptance and speech to quicken with divine energy of influence. It lives not by conformity to social norms, but by commitment to the two clauses of the contract of language. Words are not decorations, they are instruments of alignment. By the principle of polarity, speaking and listening are matched currents of one creative act. The two clauses of the contract of language still the mouth and the ear, commanding, "Speak only words that create and protect. Listen to understand rather than to interpret." In practice, this means to listen with acceptance and to speak with reason. The divine messenger knows this instinctively. Before speaking, it listens, not for approval, but for resonance. The question is not how will they respond, but is it true enough to transmit? This is why authentic speakers appear fearless. They are not confident, they are consecrated. They have accepted the sacred risk that every real sentence exposes them. This is how your divine messenger drives out Beelzebub. It interrogates his twisted motives with questions that expose his impulse to sacrifice confession and authentic communication on the altar of consumption. As acceptance restores your listening and reason guides your speech, your divine messenger comes online. Temperance cools your appetite for validation. The contract of language is renewed. You begin to speak with clarity and to listen with empathy. Curiosity, the highest of all intellectual faculties, dissolves the scaffolding of Beelzebub's temple of hypocrisy, and his kingdom of illusion collapses to ruin. This exorcism and transfiguration must happen in the mind and the body. This brings us to the sevenfold axiological and somatic ritual of the divine messenger, ancient and modern, mystical and measurable. These practices awaken coherence between word and world, thought and tone, message and embodiment. New subheader, Ritual of the Divine Messenger. Your divine messenger creates coherence and holy influence by aligning your words, your listening, and your nervous system with the principle of polarity. This principle expresses itself through language, the sacred exchange between transmission and reception, sound and silence, giving and receiving meaning. When communication feels distorted or tense, your divine messenger doesn't shout louder or retreat into bitter silence. It returns to the inner plane of correspondence, truth, integrity, and embodied tone, and restores balance there first. When expression feels blocked or performative, it doesn't chase new audiences or hide behind clever phrasing. It calls you back to the present moment, where authentic speech is born, and where influence becomes communion rather than consumption. As you master this inner polarity, your outer expression begins to harmonize with your true design instead of the appetite of the matrix for noise, validation, and control. This is how your divine messenger restores your right to influence, not by manipulating words to impress, and not by withholding truth to appear humble, but by reclaiming authorship over your voice. This is how you stay authentic and clear while others oscillate between overexposure and silence, between performance and withdrawal. Most people live in direct polarity to this divine law. When communication feels risky, they either flood the field, oversharing, over-explaining, posting, performing, or they disappear behind masks of mystery and irony. When their message is ignored, they either chase attention with louder tactics or withdraw into resentment. When their words lose traction, they add glitter instead of gravity, relying on algorithms, charisma, or outrage to fill the silence. This pattern, gluttony dressed up as expression, and repression dressed up as authenticity, quietly chains people to lives of noise, hunger, and hypocrisy. When opportunities arise to speak truth, to teach, or to lead, most people either freeze from fear of rejection or perform from fear of being forgotten. They treat volume as cause and silence as failure, forgetting that influence is an exchange, not a platform. When Beelzebub whispers through culture, he tells you that you have only two options: feast on attention or starve in obscurity. Both are distortions of the contract of language. We call these by different names: branding, marketing, self-expression, building an audience, but they are all manifestations of gluttony and hypocrisy. One compels you to consume endlessly information, opinions, validation, applause. The other compels you to fast from truth, to hide, to polish, to pretend, and to call it humility. Both reinforce the somatic and linguistic patterns that created them in the first place. They fracture the contract of language and sever the principle of polarity. This cycle only ends when you refuse the Matrix's script that says your voice belongs to metrics, trends, or trauma. Your divine messenger does this not by fighting for attention, but by restoring balance between speech and silence, aligning you with divine law and the sacred polarity of word and presence. This is not a performance trick or a communication skill. It is the natural result of practicing a ritual that involves 7 sacred steps: fasting, fixation, breathwork, prayer, vision craft, sound healing, integration. This is how somatic axiology goes beyond authentic branding or mindful communication and restructures the deeper currents that govern your voice. You start by fasting from the habits that feed Beelzebub's hunger: compulsive posting, gossip, reactive messaging, and the endless consumption of words you never metabolize. You refuse to feed the appetite for validation disguised as expression. You stop saying what sounds right until you've lived it long enough for truth to flavor your tongue. You then redirect this liberated energy through fixation on the true source of speech, the word that preceded the world. Instead of scrolling for inspiration or rehearsing how you'll be received, you fix your attention on the presence of God vibrating through your own throat. You listen until the noise within subsides, until your inner and outer voice ring on the same pitch. You begin to notice how often your speech seeks affirmation rather than creation, and you gently realign it toward coherence. Through breathwork, you disrupt the physiological loop that confuses silence with danger and expression with control. Each intentional breath resets your vagus nerve, teaching your body that it can speak truth without flooding and hold silence without disappearing. You inhale to receive inspiration. You exhale to release performance. Your body becomes a tuning fork, resonating with calm, tempered articulation. Through prayer, you stop rehearsing self-promotion and self-criticism. You bring to God the secret agreements that have ruled your speech. If I stay quiet, I'll be safe. If I'm eloquent, I'll be loved. If I'm real, I'll be rejected. If I stop performing, I'll disappear. You expose these covenants with Beelzebub, the ones that disguise hunger for truth as hunger for attention, and replace them with God's truth. That influence is stewardship, not spectacle, that your words are instruments, not ornaments, and that your voice was made to transmit coherence, not collect applause. Through visioncraft, you map your commitment to the contract of language onto real life. You envision what clean, magnetic communication looks like when your words carry presence rather than performance. You see yourself teaching, writing, and speaking in a way that nourishes rather than consumes. You imagine communities organized around coherence rather than outrage, dialogues where people leave more grounded than they arrived. You stop fantasizing about going viral and begin seeing the story your divine messenger is designed to faithfully deliver. Through sound healing, you stop letting the chaos of culture dictate the frequency of your nervous system. You use sound and music to entrain your body toward balance and resonance. You hum, chant, or tone until your throat feels open, your jaw relaxed, your words steady. You let music teach your body that restraint is not suppression and that stillness is not absence. You learn to sense vibration as the bridge between language and incarnation, and finally, through integration, You turn your new beliefs into disciplined speech and embodied listening. You decide what conversations, platforms, and topics no longer deserve your voice, and what sacred dialogues you are now called to tend. You choose when to speak, when to stay silent, and when to amplify others. As you do this ritual and its daily practices, your external communication slowly transforms. Fewer performative outbursts, fewer misunderstandings, more moments where your words land cleanly and your silence carries weight. This internal integrity doesn't magically make everyone understand you or agree with you, but it does change how you participate in the shared field of language, and that is where sustainable influence is born. This is more honest and effective than the rubber chicken philosophies of speak your truth no matter who it hurts, or stay quiet and let the universe speak for you. Performance without truth is noise. Silence without presence is evasion. True charisma emerges when word and essence become one vibration. Language, like time, money, and love, is energy. When you scatter it in exaggeration and flattery, you dilute your credibility. When you hoard it in fear of judgment, you starve your message. Gluttony, the counterfeit of inspiration, thrives in both extremes, compulsive expression and chronic muteness. True polarity lives in coherence, in the rhythm between inhale and exhale, speech and silence, declaration and listening. You cannot embody the principle of polarity while speaking to be seen or withholding to be safe. You cannot awaken your divine messenger while treating words as tools for validation instead of instruments of creation. The very same breath that once fueled gossip, persuasion, or self-defense becomes the breath that carries truth, healing, and alignment if you reclaim it. Speak your truth, find your voice, and build your platform, all sound empowering on the surface. So do their spiritual twins. Let the universe speak through you. The true guru has no beliefs, or true wisdom is silent. But neither set of slogans produces coherence. The first trains you to confuse opinion with truth. The second trains you to confuse muteness with enlightenment. Both keep you from your sacred duty to embody the word. They skip the crucial step of integration, denying the contract of language that says, I will let my words and my silence serve truth. Without integration, all your talk of conscious communication, nonviolent speech, or voice activation becomes just another form of spiritual tourism. Spiritual tourists post affirmations they don't practice, quoting poets and prophets whose silence they have never endured. They binge courses on storytelling and persuasion, yet use those tools to manipulate rather than minister. They preach about listening to understand, yet only listen long enough to reply. They attend voice workshops, sing devotional mantras, and leave unchanged, still gossiping, still reacting, still seeking applause disguised as impact. They say words are spells, but cast them carelessly, invoking confusion more than creation. They talk about speaking light, but secretly crave spotlight. This is how the performers of persuasion and the ascetics of silence alike defy the very law they claim to serve. They aren't outmaneuvering divine law. They're colliding with it and mistaking the echo for the voice of God. This denial of the contract of language cripples those who chase influence or authenticity while refusing the daily embodied choice to make word and world one. If you're reading this and feel a flicker of guilt, defensiveness, or fatigue because you recognize yourself here, don't hide it. That signal isn't shame, it's the call of your charismatic self remembering its vow. You incarnated not to consume language, but to consecrate it. Guilt, when met with humility and practice instead of performance, quickly transmutes into resonance, clarity, and grace. The real laws that govern polarity, speech, and influence will shape you whether you believe in them or not. You don't need to believe in vibration for a lie to tighten your throat. And you don't need to believe in the principle of polarity for the misuse of language to divide your life against itself. Belief helps you cooperate, but belief alone doesn't restore your voice. Law does. And without alignment with divine law, your attempts at communication, expression, or leadership are little more than elegant noise. This is how otherwise intelligent people become performers on someone else's stage, trapped in cycles of projection, performance, echo, and exhaustion. That cycle leads straight into the breakdown loops of the dark feminine and the dark masculine, the very distortions that feed Beelzebub. Both manifestations of the gluttonous self are driven by appetite, the hunger to be heard without listening, to be filled without digesting truth. The 7-step ritual of the divine messenger uses somatic axiology to turn your awareness away from Beelzebub's cycles of consumption and confusion. This is how you claim your divine right to influence, not by dominating discourse, not by disappearing in false humility, but by honoring your sacred contract with language itself, treating every word as a seed of creation and every silence as sacred soil. This begins with fasting, not just from food, but from the noise, comparison, and counterfeit eloquence that have been quietly dampening your influence. Step 1. Fasting to starve out Beelzebub. For the charismatic self, fasting is a 3-day cleanse of attention, listening, and language. It strips away every behavior that turns voice into performance. The divine messenger does not speak to be seen. It speaks because silence has ripened into necessity. In this fast, you starve the appetite for validation so presence can carry the weight of your words. Beelzebub's gluttony thrives on refreshes, hot takes, and over-talking. You will give him nothing. Influence returns as congruence, listening that lands, speech you can live after it's spoken. Ancient practice is clear. The Desert Fathers guarded silence so words regained force. Benedictines paired minimal speech with steady work. Hesychasts kept vigil over their voices until inner quiet shaped outer clarity. Taoists warn that those who truly know rarely need to speak. Across traditions, the goal was coherence, language aligned with life, voice over volume. Modern science supports this. 72 hours without novelty spikes, hot take cycles, or notification loops recalibrates dopamine sensitivity, strengthens impulse control, and reduces emotional reactivity. With less incoming noise, prefrontal circuits stabilize, timing improves, and you stop speaking to manage discomfort. In practice, fewer impulsive replies, more truth, fewer laps through the same argument, more resolution. Your assignment is exact, 3 full days, water and electrolytes as needed, unsweetened tea or black coffee only if necessary, keep it minimal. No social posting, commenting, broadcasting, or quick thoughts. No gossip or group chat pile-ons. No pundit binging or doom scrolling disguised as staying informed. No reactive explanations, over-explanations, or rapid-fire clarifications. Equally, no punitive silence. No stonewalling or withholding to control others. Keep ordinary courtesies. Answer only what truly requires your voice. Choose 2 brief communication windows per day, 15 to 30 minutes each. Outside those windows, your inboxes remain closed. If a message triggers urgency, draft your reply and hold it until a window. If the mind tries to craft a public response, you don't. Capture the impulse on 1 sheet of paper and return to stillness. Finish any work that requires words using short, clean sentences. Say it once. Say it plainly. Leave silence behind it. This is a fast from reactive expansion, talking to be seen, explaining for reassurance, over-engagement, and from panic contraction, ghosting, withholding, passive-aggressive silence. Under the principle of polarity, speaking and listening are one movement, charge and ground. When life contracts, contract dispersion and sow quietly. Clarify one message you already owe, repair one misstatement, and clear one document. When life expands, do not scatter. Make the one announcement you've actually earned, close a loop, then step back. Keep your world simple. When someone speaks to you, let them finish completely. Mirror their core point in one sentence. Offer your reply in one sentence. No rhetorical traps, no mind reading, no escalation games. If you feel the impulse to repeat yourself, stop after the first clean delivery. Treat silence as a participant, not a void. You are not starving connection, you are starving performance, so connection can become genuine. Journal daily during this fast and without self-censorship. Ask your charismatic self to reveal what Beelzebub is feeding on. You do this by investigating the emotions driving any impulsive thoughts or actions that come up during this fast. Acceptance. What am I trying to control that I need to accept? Reason. Where am I mistaking certainty for truth? Do not chase solutions. Your need for validation will try to demand immediate closure. Resist that compulsion. Ask the questions, sit with them, let the answers arise in their own time. You will know the fast is working when silence begins to feel full instead of anxious, and when your words begin to land without a second swing. The pull to check metrics, chase likes, craft comebacks, or get ahead of the narrative weakens. Others ask fewer clarifying questions. The third entity, the relational field between you, settles even when the message is firm. Influence returns because integrity has returned. When the 72 hours end, re-enter quietly, clean water, a small simple meal. No victory threads, no confessions, no broadcasts. Choose one message that matters, one promise overdue, or one clear statement avoided, and deliver it once, cleanly, at the right moment. Language is a contract. Temperance keeps it binding. Polarity gives it power. Presence is your proof. Silence is your ally. The charismatic self becomes the divine messenger when your voice stops reaching for validation and begins speaking from correspondence. What is true within, offered without. Step 2. Fixation to invoke Archangel Raphael. Fasting cleared the noise. Fixation fills the space with presence. Fixation is the practice of resting your awareness on one point, internal or external. Fasting cleared the field. Fixation fills that field with the presence of temperance, the virtue of Archangel Raphael, as God's divine counter to Beelzebub's sin of gluttony. You are not trying to perform, impress, or shapeshift. You are giving your charismatic self a clear center so it can speak from congruence instead of craving validation. You are not trying to generate confidence. You are not trying to sound right or summon inspiration. Fixation teaches your charismatic self what it feels like to stay present without chasing applause, adjusting your truth, or devouring attention to soothe doubt. It gives your expression a home. You can fix on a point in your body, or if that feels difficult at first, on a simple point in the external world. A point in your body is best because that is where your charismatic self lives, in the throat, in the realm of your need for validation and authentic influence. But you may begin wherever your nervous system can settle. As you do this, imagine your divine messenger beside you and Archangel Raphael, steward of temperance and governor of your charismatic self, guarding the space you choose. Gluttony overconsumes signal. Temperance refines it. Raphael's presence is not a performance. It is a calibration you agree to hold. Here is the practice. Sit or stand in a way that feels open yet steady. Let your shoulders relax downward. Unclench your jaw. Allow your throat to soften. Let your breath move naturally. Choose one point. If you choose a point in your body, it might be the feeling of your breath passing at the base of the throat, the subtle swelling at your collarbones as you inhale, your hand resting gently across your throat or upper chest. If you choose a point in the external world, it might be a single mark on the wall, the corner of a book or frame, the flame of a candle. Pick one. Do not look for a better one. Fixation is about staying. If you wish, you can whisper a simple line as you begin. Raphael, stand with me as I return my attention to this one point. Help me stay. Let your awareness rest on that point, not the idea of it, the sensation in your throat, or the simple seeing of the spot before you. When your mind wanders, notice that it wandered and gently return attention to the point. That is the practice. You do not need to brace, perform, or judge yourself. Every return is an act of temperance. Every return is you choosing your charismatic self instead of slipping into the old reflex of inflating, exaggerating, shrinking, or shifting to match the room. Hold this vision without attaching a story, judgment, or analysis to it. If thoughts arise like, I should be more expressive, this is boring, I need to sound inspiring, or this isn't working, let them pass like a breeze through an open window. Notice them. Let them go. Return. At first, fixation may feel uncomfortable, empty, or emotionally tight in the throat. That is normal. Your system has been conditioned to overexpress, overshare, or overconsume signal in order to secure validation. That is how Beelzebub keeps you dependent on external feedback. Fixation begins to reverse that pattern by teaching you to hold your own center without swallowing the room. Set a timer for 2 or 3 minutes the first time you practice. When that feels more natural, extend it to 5 minutes. You can use fixation during fasting or any time you feel the urge to overtalk, over-explain, seek reassurance, or fill silence with performance. The sign that fixation is beginning to work is subtle, a small but real sense that you can stay with yourself while you speak or remain silent. Stillness begins to feel less like dead air and more like a tuning chamber, a place where your voice can ring true without distortion. As this begins to settle into your body, you reclaim your right to influence. Your charismatic self prepares to align with the principle of polarity, so your words can carry power and restraint, expression and integrity, sound and silence. Step 3. Breath work to awaken your charismatic self. Fasting cleared the noise. Fixation filled the space with presence. Breathwork reconnects your mind and body. You are not trying to force confidence or shut yourself down. You are teaching your nervous system a new tempo, steady, clear, and honest. This is how your charismatic self becomes the pace setter instead of being hijacked by gluttony or the survival patterns around validation and hypocrisy. Start by taking a moment to notice the point you used in fixation. You do not have to stare at it or think about it. Just let yourself remember, I have a place to stand. Then let your attention include your breath. You will use 2 simple breathwork patterns here. 1, square breath, masculine grounding, builds steadiness and clean impact, and looks like this. Inhale through your nose for 4 seconds or 4 counts. Hold your breath at the top for 4 seconds or 4 counts. Exhale through your nose for 4 seconds or 4 counts. Hold your breath at the bottom for 4 seconds or 4 counts. Keep the count steady and unhurried. If 4 seconds or 4 counts feels easy, you may rise to 5 or 6 on each side, as long as it stays comfortable. If at any point you feel dizzy or strained, shorten the holds or return to simple in and out breathing without holds. Continue this pattern for about 2 to 3 minutes. Feel how the equal lengths and light pauses create a sense of order. Your breath moves like a square. In, hold, out, hold. With each round, you are telling your body, there is time, there is space. I do not have to rush my words. 2. Circle breath, feminine releasing, smooths and softens your expression and looks like this. Inhale through your nose for 5 seconds or 5 counts. Exhale through your nose for 5 seconds or 5 counts. Do not hold your breath at the top or bottom. Let it flow in a circle. Stay with this circular breathing for 5 to 10 minutes. Let your belly and chest rise and fall together. Let the breath move through your throat and into your upper chest, as if you were breathing space around your voice. If your mind wanders, notice that it wandered and gently return to the feeling of air moving in and out. You do not need to synchronize this with any special thought or image. The breath itself is the practice. Each square breath lays down a frame of temperance so your influence has edges. Each even inhale and exhale of circle breath releases the extra charge that would have become performance, oversharing, or the hunger for more attention. Over time, these simple patterns train your heart, lungs, and voice to move together in coherence. Your system learns that silence is not rejection and speaking is not a scramble for supply. You may feel restless at first. You may catch yourself trying to rush the counts, stretch the holds to get more out of it, or drift back into shallow chest and throat breathing. You may notice the urge to talk, explain, or mentally rehearse while you breathe. That is normal. When you notice it, soften and begin the pattern again from wherever you are. Every time you return, you are strengthening your charismatic self. You can use this breathwork during fasting, after fixation, or on its own whenever you feel the urge to overtalk. Seek reassurance, fill silence, or shapeshift to match the room. If you practice it after fixation, you may find it helpful to briefly feel your fixation point at the start of each session. Then let the breath and that point share your attention. The sign that it is working is simple. Your body feels a little more grounded. Your thoughts line up behind what you actually mean, and both silence and speech feel more available than they did before. You are not trying to shut your voice down. You are teaching your body that it is safe to speak from truth instead of hunger. With each round of square breath and each gentle circle that follows, you are awakening your charismatic self and letting it set the rhythm by which you use your influence and your words. Step 4. Prayer to transfigure your charismatic self. Fasting cleared the noise and created space. Fixation filled that space with presence. Breathwork consciously connected your mind and body. This fourth step, prayer, retrieves and retrains the beliefs and identities associated with your need for validation. Validation, not applause or agreement or performance, but an embodied sense of being seen in truth, is the need that drives your charismatic self. Your hypocritical self relies on strategies that either create a false sense of validation or meet the need at the expense of one of your other needs. Prayer reveals these old patterns clearly and replaces them with patterns rooted in congruence, polarity, and true influence. You will achieve this through 2 rituals, one to retrieve the old patterns and another to retrain your new ones. The retrieval ritual is where you identify the exact validation metaphor your nervous system is running and put it into plain language so it can be seen instead of obeyed. The retraining ritual is where you keep the old metaphor acknowledged, then practice a new one using a 3-part script paired with breath so the new model becomes your default through repetition. In Chapter 4, we discussed why positive affirmations fail. They try to paint a new statement over an old identity without ever acknowledging what your nervous system is actually defending. We don't just believe things about validation. We unconsciously live inside a cognitive metaphor for validation, and you can hear its downstream language in someone's speech. Some of the most disempowering metaphors for validation treat language as performance, audience as appetite, words as verdicts, or the self as a stage actor whose job is to hold attention at any cost. In one frame, speech becomes theater, so your body learns to exaggerate, curate, or shapeshift in order to stay visible. In another, communication becomes feeding, so attention starts to feel like food, and other people's reactions become something you must harvest to feel real. In another, words become verdicts, so every response feels like a ruling on your worth. But validation is what meets the need to be seen in truth, not the other way around. The metaphor we are recommending is stronger because it is more anti-fragile. Words gives you a lawful world of meaning instead of performance theater. Influence gives you a repeatable mode of action instead of feeding on reaction. And authentic names a stable identity that does not require exaggeration, shrinking, or shape-shifting in order to matter. For example, if someone's metaphor for language is performance, the downstream language sounds like, I need to say this better. If I'm not compelling, they'll check out. I have to make this land. And their body produces the matching feelings, strain, inflation, self-monitoring. If someone's metaphor for communication is feeding, the downstream language sounds like, I need them to respond. If they're not reacting, I'm losing them. I need more energy from the room, and the feeling downstream is hunger that never settles. If someone's metaphor for words is verdict, the downstream language sounds like, if I say this wrong, it proves I'm not enough. Their reaction will tell me whether I matter. If they disagree, I've failed, and their nervous system treats feedback like judgment. If someone's metaphor for self-expression is stage acting, the downstream language sounds like, I have to keep them interested. I need to come across the right way. If I show up plainly, I'll disappear. And their body treats honesty without performance like danger. The point is simple. These spoken phrases aren't the root. They're the surface language produced by the deeper metaphor. Beliefs and feelings form underneath that metaphor automatically, and behavior follows. That is what makes the healthier metaphor more anti-fragile than the weaker ones. Performance fails when truth is simple. Feeding fails when attention fluctuates. Verdict fails when worth gets tied to reaction. Stage acting fails when congruence matters more than impression. But words lead to influence, lead to authentic, can metabolize visibility without losing integrity, because it gives you an anti-fragile world, a repeatable behavior, and a stable identity all at once. Listen for the most common cognitive metaphors people have for validation, which include language as performance, communication as feeding, words as verdicts, self as stage actor, influence as control, attention as approval, speech as impression management, voice as bait, audience as appetite, truth as something to adjust so people stay. It is important to understand that your logical mind may immediately resist these and say, I don't really think of my voice that way. Do not let that answer lead. Your left brain is often more interested in sounding reasonable than revealing the truth. The goal here is to be honest, not clever. So do not ask only, what do I say I believe? Ask, what do my words, actions, and repeated results keep revealing? Your conscious explanation may hide the pattern, but your downstream language will expose it. If your language keeps sounding like a show, I need to say this better. If I'm not compelling, they'll check out. I have to make this land. And your actions revolve around curating, exaggerating, or performing for effect, the deeper metaphor is likely performance. If your language keeps sounding hungry, I need them to respond. If they're not reacting, I'm losing them. I need more energy from the room. And your actions revolve around harvesting attention, chasing reaction, or over-consuming validation. The deeper metaphor is likely feeding. If your language keeps sounding judged, if I say this wrong, it proves I'm not enough. Their reaction will tell me whether I matter. If they disagree, I've failed. And your actions revolve around self-censoring, people reading, or treating feedback like a ruling on your worth. The deeper metaphor is likely verdict. If your language keeps sounding theatrical, I have to keep them interested. I need to come across the right way. If I show up plainly, I'll disappear. And your actions revolve around shape-shifting, persona management, or abandoning simple truth for effect. The deeper metaphor is likely stage acting. The secret is to distrust the first rationalization and let the evidence tell the truth. Your body, your language, your habits, and your recurring outcomes will usually reveal the real metaphor faster than your conscious story will. The metaphor is the root. What you say, do, fear, and keep recreating are its derivatives. Do not analyze these yet. Simply notice which metaphor your body defaults to. If one frame makes your throat tighten, circle it. If two apply, circle both. This is the old metaphor we will retrieve in the first ritual and retrain in the second. If you try to speak or embrace a new model while the old validation metaphor is still in place, the two collide inside your body and create a feeling of unease or impostorship. One part of you says, "This is who I am now." Another part says, "No, this is how we stay accepted." The result is an inner fight you can only sustain by sheer willpower, and willpower always runs out. Identity scripts work because they don't argue with the old metaphor. They name it, honor what it was trying to do, and then retrain it into a better one. Prayer in this step follows that same pattern. Retrieval ritual. Sit in stillness. Let your awareness rest on the point you used for fixation. Let a few rounds of circle breath or a gentle throat-centered inhale soften your attention. Then bring to mind a situation where you feel the urge to perform, impress, explain yourself, or adjust your expression, where your throat tightens, your voice strains, and you feel like you have no real choice but to react in a familiar way. As you hold that moment in awareness, ask one question, not to your thinking mind, but to the part of your body that tenses, shrinks, or inflates. What did I learn I had to do in order to be seen or valued in moments like this? Do not search for an answer. Let your body tell the truth your mind has been rationalizing. Then ask a second question. What do I believe will happen if I don't do that? This is where the deeper script usually shows itself. Now ask one more and keep it simple. What metaphor for language is my body living inside right now? Performance, feeding, verdict, stage acting, control, approval, impression management, bait, appetite, or adjustment. Do not try to get it right. Name the one that feels true in your nervous system. The first answer often sounds strategic or mature. The second reveals the threat your nervous system still believes it is avoiding. Listen for short confessions. They may sound like, if I speak plainly, they'll lose interest. If I don't impress them, I'll disappear. If I tell the truth, they'll reject me. If I'm not inspiring, I don't matter. If I don't perform, I'll be forgotten. These are somatic memories, your nervous system's childhood logic. They are not your higher self speaking. They're survival scripts that once helped you get through environments where your voice was ignored, punished, or rewarded only when it fit the room. Speak the confessions aloud or write them down. Keep them simple. One sentence each. Do not edit, interpret, or argue with them. Then, on a new line, write the metaphor plainly. For my body, language is, followed by a clear and brief description of the old metaphor. That is, a performance, a feeding strategy, a verdict, a stage, etc. This is not philosophy. This is the operating metaphor your nervous system has been obeying. If your line sounds like a show, a hunger, or a judgment, I have to make this land. I need them to respond. If they don't like this, I disappear. Notice the pattern. Those are the beliefs and confessions produced by the deeper metaphor underneath. Your charismatic self is telling the truth about how it has been trying to keep you validated. Then ask a third question. Where in my body does this metaphor for language live? Place your attention there, breathe gently, let the old pattern fully surface. This is the excavation, bringing the hidden foundation of the hypocritical self into the light. As you do this, expect emotion to rise. Your old identity will fight for its life. It may show up as shame about how much you have performed, embarrassment about moments of exaggeration or self-betrayal, guilt for the years you spent shape-shifting, or resentment toward yourself or others for how it all began. Fear is not your enemy. Fear is simply the alarm. These 4 guard dog emotions are the gremlins in your nervous system, like an autoimmune response that attacks the body it is meant to protect. You do not have to silence fear. You only have to notice that they are defending a pattern that no longer serves your need for validation. Retraining ritual. Once the confession is seen, spoken, or written, the space must be filled, not with performance, not with lofty declarations, but with a new validation pattern anchored in breath, truth, and identity. Here is the pivot. We are not only changing what you say about validation, we are retraining the metaphor of validation your nervous system has been living inside. This is where prayer becomes an identity script. Use this three-part structure. First, acknowledge your old model for validation with a statement like this: I once lived as if validation, followed by a statement acknowledging the lived language and strategy that came from your old metaphor for validation. Second, follow this acknowledgement with a declaration of your new model for validation with a statement like this: Now I define validation as, followed by a clear statement of the healthier lived language that flows from your new metaphor for validation. Finally, anchor your new truth to an identity, action, and benefit. So today, I choose to, followed by a statement of a simple action you'll take every day to reinforce the new model. The important distinction here is that your script does not usually need to name the metaphor directly. The metaphor is the root frame your nervous system is living inside. The script is the lived language that comes out of that frame, what you have been saying, fearing, assuming, and practicing because that metaphor was running underneath it. Example: I once lived as if I had to impress people, keep their attention, and come across the right way in order to matter, as if plain truth would make me disappear. Now I define validation as speaking with congruence, clarity, and honesty so my words can carry real weight without performance. So today I choose to speak simply and let my words stand through this divine ritual to awaken my divine messenger. Notice that this does not erase the old belief. It names it, honors the role it played, and then assigns a higher truth and a new behavior. You are not pretending you never thought this way. You are continuing the story with a different main character, your charismatic self under the care of your divine messenger. Now speak your new script aloud for 3 slow breaths. Inhale as you remember the new model. Exhale as you release the old model. Let your breath carry the new script into your body. This is how you retrain your nervous system, not through performance, but through patterned presence. Each time you repeat a script like this, you give your system a new reference point. Over time, your default mode network and your vocal reflexes begin to defend your truth instead of your old fear. End by placing your awareness on your fixation point again. Feel your throat soften. Let a few rounds of circle breath or a gentle humming exhale close your prayer with resonance and clarity. This is how your charismatic self begins to transfigure. By clearing the old validation strategy through honest retrieval and excavation, and by installing a new one through intentional, breath-carried identity, this is how you transfigure your hypocritical self into your divine messenger. Step 5. Vision craft to align your divine messenger. Fasting cleared the noise. Fixation filled the space with presence. Breathwork reconnected your mind and body. Prayer retrieved and retrained the beliefs tied to your need for validation. Visioncraft gives your charismatic self an identity that aligns with the divine principle of polarity. You are not trying to impress, persuade, perform, or protect an image. You are letting your imagination rehearse what it feels like to live as someone who moves with polarity, responding when pressure rises and speaking from presence when the spotlight appears. So your validation comes from coherence, not performance. Visioncraft is spiritual play. It is not about realism. It is about giving your nervous system a vivid picture of your divine messenger in motion, clear, steady, honest, and influential without distortion. The form doesn't matter, teacher, orator, shepherd, poet, warrior of truth, or a future you who uses language as light instead of camouflage. The function does. Your divine messenger moves with temperance instead of gluttony. Begin as you have learned. Find a comfortable position. Feel your fixation point, the openness of your throat, the length of your neck, or your hand resting over your collarbones. Take a minute or two of circle breath until you feel more centered. Now let the image of your divine messenger appear. It may arrive quietly at first, a posture, a tone of voice, a simple silhouette, or it may appear fully formed. Clothing, a stage, a meeting room, or a sacred space, a symbol of clarity or truth. Trust what comes. This is your charismatic self exploring the identity of your divine messenger. Once the figure appears, notice how they stand, how they breathe, how their presence feels. Let yourself sense, even slightly, what it is like to stand inside that coherence. Now bring in the principle of polarity through two clear scenes. Scene 1. When pressure rises, respond. Imagine a moment where emotional, social, or conversational pressure moves toward you. Someone may be upset, confused, defensive, excited, or demanding. Or imagine a symbolic scene, a wave rising toward the shore, wind pushing against your chest, flames flaring upward, a crowded room turning toward you, a storm gathering at the edge of a field. Everything in the scene is charged and fast-moving. Notice what your divine messenger does. They do not react. They do not rush, and they respond. Responding means pausing long enough to choose clarity over impulse. You might see yourself slowing your breath as the energy rises, keeping your voice steady and warm, asking one precise question instead of arguing, naming what matters without excess words, holding your posture while others unravel. Let the scene unfold. Feel how responding is not withdrawal. It is authority. When pressure rises, I respond. Where do you feel that steadiness? Scene 2. When the spotlight appears, speak from presence. Now imagine a moment where attention shifts toward you, an invitation to speak, an opening in a conversation, a moment of recognition, a request for your insight. Or imagine a symbolic scene, a single beam of light illuminating your form, a quiet bell ringing in a large room, a pathway clearing before your feet, a microphone humming with readiness, a door opening into a bright space. Everything in the scene invites expression. Notice what your divine messenger does. They do not perform and they do not shrink. They speak from presence. Speaking from presence means using language that carries truth without performance, posturing, or pressure. You might see yourself speaking a short, clear sentence, using your natural tone instead of forcing it, letting silence hold the space between your words, choosing what is true instead of what is impressive, offering a perspective that clarifies instead of competes. Let the scene unfold. Feel how speaking from presence is not small. It is alignment. When the spotlight finds me, I speak from presence. Where do you feel that clarity? Let your breath match the messenger's breath. If resistance appears, fear of judgment, fear of being misunderstood, fear of not being enough, or the old urge to perform, do not fight it. Give it a simple shape if you like, a fading echo, an old script, a mask falling away. Acknowledge it. Then return to the divine messenger and how they move with polarity instead of hypocrisy. Stay with these two scenes, pressure rising and the spotlight appearing, for 5 to 10 minutes. You may see many settings and symbols over time. Good. You are not creating one identity. You are learning a pattern. When pressured to react, I choose to respond. When pressured to perform, I choose to be present. Close your vision craft by letting the image of your divine messenger step into you and you into them. Imagine sharing a spine, a breath, a voice. You might quietly say, I respond with clarity, I speak with presence, my influence moves with me. Then open your eyes, feel your fixation point once more, and notice even the smallest shift. More calm, more clarity, more grounded influence. You do not have to believe every part of the vision. Your task is to breathe and rehearse who you are becoming. Over time, your charismatic self will recognize the divine messenger not as fantasy, but as its mature form, capable of influence without performance. This is visioncraft, aligning your inner imagery with the principle of polarity so your need for validation is met from the inside out. Step 6. Sound healing to quicken your divine messenger. Fasting cleared the noise, fixation filled the space with presence, breathwork reconnected your mind and body, prayer retrieved and retrained the beliefs tied to your need for validation. Visioncraft gave your charismatic self an identity aligned with the principle of polarity. Sound healing quickens that identity within your body. This is how you tune your physical instrument so it can actually hold the signal of your divine messenger. You are not trying to create a performance high or a rush of inspiration. You are teaching your nervous system what clear, tempered influence feels like, so your new identity has a stable home in your throat and chest. Sound is one of our most ancient and intuitive healing tools. It bypasses cognition and drops directly into your tissues, breath, and bones. When paired with simple, honest movement, sound becomes a tuning fork that recalibrates your entire communicative field. For the charismatic self, sound must be steady, resonant, and measured. This is not the moment for dramatic crescendos or emotional monologues. This is the moment for temperance. Enough voice to be true, not so much that you spill. For letting your body know you are safe enough to speak from truth, not hunger. Begin with mid to low frequency toning. Choose a throat-centered vowel sound like ham, the traditional throat bija, or a grounded om. Let the tone originate in your chest and throat rather than just your mouth. Sit or stand tall, relax your jaw, and inhale gently through your nose. On the exhale, sustain ham or om for 5 to 10 seconds. Feel the vibration moving through your throat, jaw, and upper chest. You are not trying to sound impressive. You are trying to sound real. Let the tone be resonant, imperfect, and full. After several rounds of toning, shift into gentle humming with your lips closed. Let the resonance fill your mouth, sinuses, and skull, then keep drawing your awareness back down into the throat as you hum. Keep your breath slow and steady. This embodied vibration tells your nervous system you are safe to have a voice. The consistent sound and humming tone signal that expression does not have to be a scramble for attention. In simple terms, your body hears these sounds as a sign that you can speak and stay congruent or stay silent without disappearing. To deepen the effect, pair your sound with slow, symmetrical movement. Think in terms of balanced, honest motions rather than big theatrical gestures. Examples: neck arcs, slowly tracing a gentle rainbow with your nose from shoulder to shoulder, inhaling as you rise through center, exhaling and humming as you arc toward each side. Shoulder rolls, rolling your shoulders up, back, and down in slow circles while you tone or hum, feeling space open around your throat and collarbones. Gesture and gather. On the inhale, extend one hand slightly outward at chest height as if offering a word. On the exhale, hum as you draw the hand back to rest over your sternum, gathering your influence home. These patterns wake up the muscles that frame your voice, neck, throat, shoulders, and upper chest. They send signals through your joints and fascia that say, we can be seen, we can be heard, we are still anchored. You're not just giving your body an idea of clean influence. You're giving it a felt experience of expression that doesn't tip into hypocrisy or self-erasure. If you're musically inclined, the charismatic self resonates beautifully with the mixolydian mode. This tonal structure feels rhythmic, open, and grounded, bright without naivety, expressive without excess. It carries the flavor of conversation, direct, human, and a little raw. Here are some examples of songs in the mixolydian mode: Sweet Home Alabama, Leonard Skynyrd, Clocks, Coldplay, Norwegian Wood, The Beatles, Dark Star, Grateful Dead, Sympathy for the Devil, The Rolling Stones, Seven Bridges Road, Eagles, Can't You See, The Marshall Tucker Band, The Rain Song, Led Zeppelin, Ophelia the Band, Fire on the Mountain, Grateful Dead. Create a playlist of these songs and others in the Mixolydian mode. Listen to these when you need to restore a sense of honest, grounded influence. You might also play one or two tracks quietly while you tone ham or hum along to a simple melody after your identity script and vision craft. Put a single song on repeat while you do neck arcs, shoulder rolls, or the gesture and gather pattern. Even a simple Mixolydian chord or riff can stabilize your frequency and reinforce a somatic sense of tempered expression. When you complete your sound healing session, sit back against a support or lie down with one hand over your throat and one over your chest and rest for 1 to 2 minutes. Feel the weight of your head and neck held. Let your breath return to its natural pace. Let the vibrations settle. Notice how your body feels quieter, clearer, and more willing to speak only what you can live. This is how your charismatic self becomes a trustworthy messenger for your other selves. Regulating your core expression restores balance across your inner ecosystem. Sound can feel powerful, and that's welcome, but feeling powerful is not the only aim. The goal is to bring the charismatic self and divine messenger online in the context of real experience. Many seekers confuse performance with transformation. Volume without integrity is just another mask. The charismatic self doesn't chase applause. It holds tone. The more anchored your voice, the less hijackable your influence. This is the pivot from resonance to embodiment, from internal coherence to external congruence. In the next and final step, you'll complete the circuit through embodied action. For now, let sound do what it has always done for the human soul. Remind your body that it is safe to be heard or to be silent, and give your divine messenger a rhythm it can live in.
Step 7. Integration to honor your contract with language.
Fasting cleared the noise. Fixation filled the space with presence. Breathwork reconnected your mind and body. Prayer retrieved and retrained the beliefs tied to your need for validation. Visioncraft gave your charismatic self an identity aligned with the principle of polarity. Sound healing quickened that identity within your body. Integration turns your new identity into actions that honor your contract with language and make influence trustworthy in your real life. Everything you have done in this ritual so far has prepared you for this step. Integration is not about sounding wise, being admired, or finally becoming the most compelling person in the room. It is about honoring your contract with language, the sacred agreement to treat words as instruments of creation and to treat listening as the receptive half of that same creative act. This contract has 2 clauses, and both must live in your habits or your influence will split against itself. Clause 1. I will speak only words that create and protect. This is the outward clause. It governs what leaves your mouth, what tone carries it, and whether your words build coherence or corrode it. Clause 2. I will listen to understand, not to interpret. This is the inward clause. It governs how you receive another person, whether you make room for their meaning, and whether your listening creates communion or distortion. The divine messenger lives in the union of these 2 clauses. Most people try to master one while neglecting the other. They either speak with force and little humility, or listen with passivity and never tell the truth. One turns language into domination, the other turns it into disappearance. Your charismatic self is here to reconcile the 2. Integration is not about controlling outcomes. It is about forming habits that keep your divine messenger active. Most spiritual and personal growth paths glorify breakthroughs, downloads, and moments of insight, but never train you to communicate differently on an ordinary Tuesday. Influence is not built by occasional clarity. It is built by repeated congruence. Action tells the world and your nervous system what kind of speaker and listener you are becoming. Before this ritual, your hypocritical self tried to meet your need for validation through performance, over-talking, polished image, strategic silence, mimicry, and the endless management of how you were being perceived. Beelzebub fed on that appetite. He taught you to consume attention instead of creating trust. He taught you to use language as camouflage instead of communion. He taught you to listen for threats, loopholes, and opportunities to look good rather than listening to understand. Those actions were not failures, they were survival. But your charismatic self does not survive by performing. It influences by becoming congruent. Integration means that every small communicative action you take is chosen, not compulsive, honest, not theatrical, grounded in temperance instead of hijacked by appetite. You stop using words to chase validation and start using them to carry truth. You stop using listening to gather ammunition and start using it to make contact. This is not about grand communication goals. Focusing on the big stage, the audience, the speech, the book, the platform, the important conversation only creates pressure, fantasy, and delay. Goals live in the external world, the world of effects. They are useful but fragile. They depend on timing, other people, and circumstances you cannot fully control. Habits live in the internal world, the world of causes. They shape identity. They regulate your nervous system. They make trustworthy influence inevitable. When you build habits that honor both clauses of the contract with language, the larger outcomes begin to take care of themselves. Even if a particular opportunity disappears, your habits continue generating clarity, trust, resonance, and clean authority. This is the structural side of integration, tiny daily acts that slowly retrain the whole field of your communication. But the deeper practice is what you might call consecrated language, the habit of enjoying truthful contact more than impression management. When you fall in love with coherence rather than applause, you win even when no one notices. The habits remain. They keep compounding. They keep feeding your voice. Over time, this makes meaningful influence practically inevitable, even if it arrives by a different path than your ego imagined. Your actions must be small enough to do every day, honest enough to expose performance, embodied enough to become habits, balanced enough to honor both clauses of the contract. Think in 5 domains when defining your actions. Right speech. One small act of truthful, constructive expression, saying the true thing kindly instead of the flattering thing strategically, answering clearly instead of over-explaining, letting your yes mean yes and your no mean no. Empathic. Listening. One act of listening to understand rather than interpret, asking, "What did you mean by that?" before reacting, reflecting back what you heard, letting someone finish without preparing your defense. Tone and timing, one act of tempering your delivery, pausing before you speak, lowering the heat in your throat when pressure rises, choosing a shorter, cleaner sentence instead of an emotional spill. Relational repair, one act that nourishes the third entity, clarifying a misunderstanding, owning where your words distorted trust, apologizing without performance, checking whether your message landed the way you meant it. Hidden integrity, one act of private congruence, keeping a promise no one is tracking, refusing gossip when it would buy approval, withholding a clever line you cannot yet embody, choosing silence when speech would only feed appetite. Choose one habit from one domain to begin. Do not try to sanctify your whole tongue in a day. Just pick one and keep your rhythm. Remember also that a habit only becomes part of your identity when it is paired with a state. Do this before practicing each one of your habits. Find your fixation point in the throat and chest, the hollow of your throat, the vibration at your sternum, or one hand resting lightly on each. Take 3 slow breaths with the exhale slightly longer than the inhale. Recall your divine messenger, even if only for a second. Their steady tone, their clean eye contact, the way they speak without performance and listen without intrusion. Briefly remember both clauses of the contract. Speak only words that create and protect, and listen to understand, not to interpret. When finished with your action, take 3 more slow breaths. Let the last exhale soften your jaw, throat, and chest. This sequence says to your nervous system, this action belongs to the charismatic self. This action honors language. This action strengthens the divine messenger. As your new habits take root, your old identity will push back, not because you are doing something wrong, but because you are doing something true. Resistance appears in 4 forms: shame, I should already know how to say this better, guilt. Who am I to speak this clearly or to ask for real understanding? Grief, mourning the years you spent performing, hiding, over-explaining, staying silent, or being misunderstood. Resentment toward yourself or others for seeming more confident, more articulate, more magnetic, or more deeply heard. Fear is not your enemy. Fear is a protector. But these 4 forms create the false signal that summons fear like an autoimmune response, attacking the very coherence that would heal you. You are not taking these actions to become impressive. You are doing them to stop feeding the unnecessary alarms around being seen, heard, and misunderstood. When these reactions arise, do not override them and do not obey them. Acknowledge them. If the charge feels strong, take 3 to 5 gentle breaths. In through the nose for 4 or 5 counts, out for 6 or 7, imagining excess heat draining from your throat into the center of your chest. Then return to your small action. Each time you do, you cast a vote for the divine messenger over the hypocritical self. If an old identity script surfaces, like, if I do not sound impressive, I will disappear. If I really listen, I will lose control. If I tell the truth plainly, I will be rejected. Or, if I do not manage their perception, I will not matter. Treat that as a gift. Capture it later in your journal and walk it through your retraining ritual. I once believed, now I know, so today I choose. In this way, your daily actions continue to expose and rewrite the deeper patterns that once fed Beelzebub through hypocrisy, appetite, and performed influence. Use 1 or 2 of these each day. Did my words create and protect today? Did I listen to understand, or did I listen to interpret? Where did I speak from presence? Where did I start performing? What emotion tried to hijack my tone or my listening today? What tiny choice supported my identity as the divine messenger? Where did I choose communion over appetite? These reflections turn experience into resonance. They will expose your old validation scripts so you can replace them with new beliefs, identities, actions, habits, and results. In time, your internal congruence will begin to manifest in your external world as clearer relationships, cleaner speech, fewer distortions, and influence that lands without force. This is the ritual of somatic axiology and spiritual transfiguration at the level of language. This is how you activate your divine messenger, temperate in tone, true in meaning, a voice of authority in a world possessed by performance.
End of Chapter 9 of Awaken Your Shadow by Seth Cherapak.